The Agenda with Steve Paikin is brought to you by the Chartered Professional Accountants of Ontario. CPA Ontario is a regulator, an educator, a thought leader, and an advocate. We protect the public. We advance our profession. We guide our CPAs. We are CPA Ontario. And by viewers like you. Thank you.
This past COVID year has upended many things. It's also reinforced the old adage that necessity is the mother of invention, or rather, reinvention. Tonight, in a television first, Ontario's 3 Chief Justices from the Court of Appeal, the Superior Court, and the Court of Justice are with us on transforming our court system to keep the scales of justice in balance despite a pandemic. Then, everyone's had their own reaction to this time of social isolation and color-coded restrictions. We'll look at the psychology of why some fare better than others. It's Tuesday, March the 9th, and that's next on the agenda. We've always thought that one of the most important values in our justice system is the right for all the participants to be with one another in a courtroom, to judge the truthfulness of testimony, read body language, and so on. But for the past year, Ontario's court system has rarely been able to do that. Like so many of our other realities, justice has moved online. How's it working out? Well, let's ask the 3 senior-most judicial officials in our province today. In the provincial capital at Osgoode Hall, Mr. Justice George Strathy, Chief Justice for the Ontario Court of Appeal, and Mr. Justice Jeffrey Morowitz, Chief Justice for the Ontario Superior Court of Justice. And in the nation's capital, Madam Justice Lise Maisonneuve, Chief Justice for the Ontario Court of Justice. And to the best of our knowledge, this is the first time that Ontario's 3 Chief Justices have been on television together for an interview. So we're delighted to welcome all 3 of you to TVO tonight. It's great to have you here. Mr. Justice Strathy, get us started here. I would like to take you back to basically a year ago right now. COVID-19 hits. The province of Ontario goes into a state of emergency. We have a whole host of new protocols in place. What was job 1 for you when it came to the continuation of the administration of justice?
Steve, I hope I can call you Steve. Thank you so much for having us on your program. As you say, it's probably a first, and it's a great opportunity for us to share some thoughts with you and your viewers. Really, job 1 was 3 jobs rolled into one. The first job was health and safety, to ensure that the courts were a safe place for the people who need our services, for the members of the public who appear before the courts, for witnesses, for jurors, and of course for all the staff who work in the court, and particularly those who deal with the public on a frontline basis. The second part of job 1 was to keep the courts open. The courts were declared to be a public service, or public essential service at the beginning of the pandemic, and we considered our part of job 1 was to keep that service available. And the third part of job 1 was to observe the open courts principle, the principle that says that justice must be done publicly and visibly. And if I just look back to what's happened since COVID broke almost a year ago on the province and the country, I would say that from the get-go, we recognized that we would have to be guided by the advice of public health professionals in deciding how we could operate and what conditions we could operate under. We worked together in that regard. We got some top-notch advice from public health officials and from provincial administrators. We were able to keep the courts open, and we have been able to keep the courts open. They've never closed. Not one of our 3 courts has closed during COVID. We did it gradually. We started dealing with what was urgent and essential for people accused of crimes, dealing with bail, protecting families, and making the courts open for civil disputes. And we've also, thankfully, been able to adopt new technology so that we could actually conduct hearings remotely. And just as you're doing with your show, we've been able to conduct hearings to sometimes in person, but where conditions required it, remotely. And also through the media we've used, we've been able to keep the courts open, whether by audio in some cases or by video. We've made the courts accessible to the public at large. Even 2 weeks ago, we had a case in our court where we had more than 500 viewers watching the case. And as you probably saw last week, Chief Justice Morowitz's court dealt with an important public matter, a sentencing matter in which hundreds and hundreds of viewers watched. So overall, I think that was job one, and we're fairly comfortable with how we've dealt with it.
All right, let me pick up the story with Mr. Justice Morowitz. I know I've talked to people in the post-secondary world who have said that they managed to do essentially in a few weekends what it otherwise would have taken 10 years to do, namely move thousands of courses from the classroom to online. In your case, what did you discover about either how quickly or how difficult it was to pivot to include online in the way you do your work?
Well, thanks, Steve. It was a challenge. We'll put it that way. This is a profession, a legal profession that is steeped in tradition. And we're talking a process where the courts were operating paper-based. And that has been the way in which it's been done for hundreds of years. Bankers' boxes would arrive daily for each judge. You'd lug the work home. You'd do it sometimes at home, sometimes at the office, but all of it was in paper, and all of a sudden you did not have that available to you. We had tremendous cooperation from the entire legal community, and I'll start with our judges. You know, in our court, there's 335 across the province. You know, to a person, they were all saying, what can I do to help? Bar associations, local bar associations, and specifically I'll give a shout out to the Ontario Bar Association and the Advocate Society for immediate assistance that they provided. The Ministry of the Attorney General, again, came to the realization that we have to do something instantly. So we started with rudimentary email to exchange files, and the bar was great in providing great assistance there. Then we gradually morphed into the Zoom platform for video hearings. We were doing most of them by teleconference. But the result has been, since then, we've now adopted Case Lines as a document sharing platform so that we now can get the documents to judges, to parties, and seamlessly right through to a hearing. And that is in process, but it's going to be finalized by another couple months right across the province. So we have been able, and I'm very happy to say and proud to say that we're closing in on 100,000 virtual hearings in our court since the pandemic started. It took a pandemic to jumpstart it because we've been asking for this technology for years. But now it has been delivered. We're not all the way there. We still have a long way to go. But we've survived and flourished and been able, as Chief Strathy said, keep the doors open and keep justice moving.
Well, that leads nicely to my next question for Madam Justice Maisonneuve, which is, and don't take this the wrong way, but our generation tend to be digital immigrants, I've heard the expression, as opposed to digital natives, which our kids and grandkids may be. So some of this stuff doesn't necessarily come as easily to us as it does to younger people. How much of an adjustment was it for you and your colleagues to do your work under these new circumstances?
So, Steve, you've hit the nail on the head. It was an incredible adjustment to move to what I would call a largely virtual environment, basically overnight, as described by my two colleagues, was enormous. And for the judicial officers, in the Ontario Court of Justice, we have 750 judicial officers. It varied. Some were much more comfortable with technologies than others, and we had to answer those needs and support them to move to a virtual world. But in all three courts, I think everybody stepped up and learned what they had to learn to be, as Chief Justice Morris said, just make it happen for us to continue to serving the public. And of course, you have to understand, Steve, that the technology, as mentioned by my colleagues, was not available everywhere. To move to a virtual platform in a large urban center is much easier than in a satellite court in Northern Ontario, for example, where the technology is just not available as available as elsewhere. And I think you need to understand the scale of the operation of the three courts. In the Ontario Court of Justice, we preside in more than 200 locations in 7 judicial regions. In the Superior Court of Justice, they sit in 52 locations across 8 judicial regions. And of course, we have the Court of Appeal. In a year, on average, we receive approximately 240,000 new cases, and that's just criminal cases, and approximately 14,000 family matters per year. And of course, it does not include the Provincial Offences Act, which is close to 1 million at times. And then of course, you've got the Superior Court. Both courts, we deal both with criminal and family, but the Superior Court also deals with civil matters. And then you have the Court of Appeal, who approximately receives 1,200 appeals per year. So you can imagine how wide and how vast it is. And then, as I mentioned, different communities have different availability to them with the technology. So that was quite difficult. But we did it, and we managed to do it.
And how well is it working in your judgment?
It is working very well. Do we have work to do still? Of course we do. Every day, every week, we have a challenge to deal with. For example, security. When you're running a virtual court, we have to deal with those issues. And I think once the pandemic hopefully finishes, we'll be able to sit down and see what stays and what doesn't stay and move forward. But the last point I'd like to make, Steve, is that it's been difficult for everyone, not just the judiciary, as mentioned by my colleagues, for all stakeholders and for the public to say, where do I go? How do I call in? Who's going to hear my case? How do I file the documents? So if it wasn't for the collaboration of everyone, as mentioned by Chief Justice Morowitz, especially the bar, the Attorney General's office, the Solicitor General's office, because we deal with many people in custody, this could not have been done. So the adjustment was huge, but the team effort was remarkable to make it happen, and everyone stepped up.
As I suggested in the intro, going to Zoom does raise a whole host of new and ethical questions. And Chief Justice Strathy, let me put this quote to you. I was just chatting with I think a well-respected defense attorney the other day, who said, and here's the quote: "It's appropriate where the issues permit this, but there are some cases where credibility is an issue, where you want to see the witness in person. The key is to make Zoom an option, but not mandatory, and up to the defense." What's your view on that position?
I guess my view would be that, we have learned a lot from the use of digital technology, including the use of Zoom. And we found that it has its value and obviously its limitations. It's not necessarily the right thing in every case. But just to pick an example, it's been tremendously effective in allowing people who would not otherwise be able to readily access the courts to have access to the court. For example, would somebody really want to come to downtown Toronto for a hearing in the Court of Appeal that might last for 15 minutes if they're coming from Thunder Bay? Or would somebody who has challenges in getting to the court for a short hearing want to come to court? Or should routine procedural matters be dealt with more effectively over Zoom or in person? I take the point that your lawyer, the lawyer you spoke to, made that in some cases it is important to be in court. I don't think anybody would relish the idea, or any judge would relish the idea of convicting someone of a serious criminal offense over Zoom or over the telephone. I think there are certainly cases where the impact of being in court makes a big difference. There's a sort of cathartic value to parties being in court and seeing and hearing and being in the presence of the opposing party, particularly, for example, in family matters where the judge in person can have a real impact on the emotional way in which the parties receive the message. And you know, the jury's out a little bit as to whether you have to, the only way to assess credibility in person is across a room. We all know, I think the judges know, that credibility findings don't just depend upon how the person looks or behaves, but the inherent logic of what they're saying. So we're thinking about it. We'll learn from this experience. I'm sure that we will expand the use of technology in the right way, but there's a lot to still be thought through.
And as a quick follow-up here, if it is a Zoom trial, does it matter where the judge is, as in here in the province of Ontario or elsewhere?
Well, as you well know, Steve, this is a hot issue. We read the newspapers, we hear what's going on. I might just say that, just to return to what I said at the beginning of your program, we've always been guided by public health advice. And the public health advice we've given to our judges, and we've done this deliberately and in concert, the three of us, is, you know, pay attention to what the public health officials are saying, and don't engage in unnecessary travel outside the province. That's been our uniform message. Now, to return to your question, it's really, frankly, one that I can't answer. These are most unusual circumstances during the pandemic. We're confronting circumstances that we've never dealt with before. We're dealing with technology in a way that we've never dealt with it before. And we may ultimately, and I say we, my court as the appeal court in this province, may ultimately have to decide the issue of whether a hearing held from outside the province is legally effective. And because of that, I wouldn't feel comfortable answering it, quite apart from the fact that I don't know the answer, because the law is a work in progress in this area.
Understood. Chief Justice Morowitz, let's get a better understanding of how much work still happens inside a courtroom versus how much happens on Zoom. How much in-person trial work have you actually been able to do over the past year?
Well, Steve, it certainly depends on the area of responsibility that you're working in. Certain aspects of criminal matters and family matters are much better off in a courtroom and should be in a courtroom. I think a lot of the time that has been spent in the past year has been retrofitting all the courtrooms around the province so that they can accommodate with the safety protocols in place in court, in-person hearings. I think we would all like to get back to, you know, an increased amount of in-person hearings, but we have to be careful. You know, this profession, judges in particular, we're in a position to compel people to attend. And if you're going to compel an individual to leave their residence and travel to a courtroom, you better be very satisfied that that courtroom is safe. And we work very closely with the ministry and with the appropriate health advice to achieve that. So that's where we're trying to get to. As far as the subject matter of matters in court, advocacy is always going to have a place. And I try to draw a line at this stage that if a part of a proceeding is non-substantive, and it could be scheduling matters or consent or unopposed matters, they're far better off being done virtually. And we will continue to do them virtually. It serves everybody much better. Like, you know, why would you take counsel or an individual 2 hours to travel to a courtroom for a 2-minute unopposed hearing? Just makes no sense. So that's going to continue, certainly in a virtual setting. The other end of things is that if you do have, you know, a trial proceeding or a very complex application that's being heard with many, many documents, that matter where advocacy is at a premium, you're dealing with a substantive matter to be resolved through the adjudication, through the court system, much better off going to be doing it in person. We're then going to have hybrid matters where you're going to have some witnesses or parties from out of town, and you can do that in combination, some in a court, some by virtual. We're still sorting it out, and we have to get a lot of input and advice from all the other stakeholders, and I alluded earlier the cooperation that we're getting from the bar. But we also have to take into account the vulnerable parts of society, those who have difficulties, whether they're self-represented, some other aspect that is going to cause them concerns. We have to listen to that group to ensure that they too are feeling that they get a fair hearing. And at the end of the day, isn't that the objective? We have to be satisfied that those who are involved in the court process feel that they have been heard. They may not agree with the outcome, but they must feel that they've been heard and that they've had a fair hearing in all aspects.
Indeed. Well, Chief Justice Misanov, that does raise the issue of how high a priority it is for you, notwithstanding everything Chief Morowitz just said, to get everybody, as much as possible, back into an actual courtroom.
So the first priority, Steve, of course you can understand, is the health and safety of everyone. And that will take time, and we will have to follow public health's advice to determine will it be completely safe to go back to operations we used to do before COVID. But having said that, I echo the comments of my colleague that it's going to be different even after the pandemic. I think we've learned a great deal from this, and it has forced us to look at other alternatives where I believe it has actually increased access to justice. Having said that, we also have to be careful that a virtual world is not accessible to everyone. Not everybody has access to the internet or a computer or the proper equipment to be able to reach the courts through the virtual world. So we have to be very careful that the most vulnerable of our society are still served. And so I think what you'll see is basically, as mentioned by Chief Justice Morris, almost three types of hearing depending on the nature of the case. Fully virtual, fully in person, or more of a hybrid model. And that's what we need to move to next, and to determine what's here to stay and what's here not to stay.
I'm often accused of bringing Bill Davis, the former Ontario Premier, into too many discussions that I do, sitting here in a television station which he created 50 years ago, in a studio named after him, the William G. Davis Studio. And our director, Sheldon Osmond, will now bring up a series of photos from the A. Grenville Davis and William G. Davis Courthouse, which is in Brampton, Ontario, named after the former Premier and his father, who was a Crown Attorney for 30-plus years in what was then, I guess, Peel County. And we can see, and maybe perhaps Chief Misanov, you can take us through some of this. We are seeing, Sheldon, let's see the next shot then, some pretty stark evidence of the fact that the courts are going to look fairly different going forward. Everybody feel comfortable with these changes?
So, Steve, of course, it had to be done in order for us to be able to continue our in-person work and for the courts not to close. And thank God it was done, because otherwise I don't think we could have continued. And you see the amount of work that's been put in there. And that's just one courtroom out of how many in Ontario, many, many courtrooms, as I mentioned earlier. So the Recovery Secretariat from the Attorney General's office worked very hard at getting this done very, very quickly. Do we feel comfortable with it? It's causing issues at times, the sound, the vision lines and whatnot. And hopefully those will be able to come down once we are absolutely certain that COVID is gone. But it was completely necessary. And if the work hadn't been done, the courts could not have continued their operations. So that was a good example of all the work that's gone in to keep the courts open and not having to close them due to the health issue that we were dealing with.
Chief Justice Strathy, have you had to do that down at Osgoode Hall?
Well, we, as you know, we're an appellate court. So we don't have some of the challenges that the trial courts have in terms of witnesses. We don't have witnesses in our court. That's made it easier for us to do remote hearings. But we have several of our courtrooms, or two of our courtrooms are now set up with similar plexiglass barriers and all the other accoutrements to make it safe for in-person appeals. And we actually did some in-person appeals last November using the kind of courtroom that you've just seen. Unfortunately, when the restrictions were increased, we decided to go back to entirely virtual. We will certainly, going forward, if the need arises, be able to do first hybrid appeals with some appeals being conducted remotely, some in person, and we'll see how things go. So we're ready for it. I can tell you nobody thinks it's much fun, but it's necessary, and we'll do it as long as we have to do it.
Chief Justice Morowitz, I know that in our attempts to do this program, it is frequently the case, and thankfully not yet, knock on wood if I had some around here, where the screen freezes or guests get dropped or, you know, the lips are moving but the sound is not in sync with all of that. Does all of that happen in your world too? And how annoying does that become, if it does, to try to administer justice in the province?
Well, Steve, it happens, and it's going to continue to happen, although I believe it's better than it was. You just have to accept the fact that the speed with which you can conduct matters is slower in a virtual world than it is in live and in person. You have no option but to sort of wait until such time as the screen unfreezes and that the audio is picked up and is being heard by all parties. The failure to do so would result in a lot more work for Chief Justice Strathi and the Court of Appeal. We have to make sure that we have a proper record, that we deliver justice in an appropriate manner. And to do that, you have to be able to see and hear what's going on. So it slows it down. And you just have to cope the same way that you cope with, I'm sure, some of the guests that you've had in your program in the past year. But we do the best we can.
Amen to that. Now, what can you imagine, Chief Justice Morowitz, what can you imagine of the new virtual world in which you're working becoming a permanent part of your world, even after COVID-19 is over and done with?
Well, prior to COVID, we had spent years advocating for greater technology and more up-to-date technology in the court. Regrettably, it took a pandemic to achieve it, and we're not all the way there yet, but we are not going back. I think you've heard during this program some of the areas that we think are very, very well suited to be conducted virtually, and we'll continue to do that. Training all the way through the legal process of the legal system still has a long way to go. As judges, the way in which we conduct business has been turned on its ear, but we're now able to, a great example is that we are able from any part of the province to be able to access a file. There are many cases where a little bit of, case management from a judge from time to time can be very helpful in moving the process along. And if we can, use that ability and have a judge wherever they are, whether it's Thunder Bay, Ottawa, North Bay, Hamilton, be able to connect with the litigants on a file, we can move things along. And isn't that one of the objectives that we've got, which is to have access to justice and the resolution of files in a much speedier manner than we have in the past? Yes, there are going to be issues, and there's a lot of concern, I'm sure, in the bar, but we still have to respect, as I said earlier, that advocacy does have its role, and we're going to ensure that matters of substance are still conducted in the courtroom, but taking advantage of all the technology that we now have.
Madam Justice Maisonneuve, I guess I'll give you the last word on this, because if there's one thing I've heard about the court system from so many people, it's that you can drown in the paperwork that has been required in the past. Can you imagine going forward that whatever new virtual online world you're into, it's going to replace some of that needless paperwork going forward?
That's my dream, Steve. So as a result of the pandemic, what's happened is that we had started a process some years ago where we were going to become paperless, and that was called an intake project, which is done basically virtually. And as a result of the pandemic, it's now been rolled out across the province and about to be rolled out completely across the province. And that is the beginning to a paperless world. And once that starts, Steve, it opens the door to many of our front end part of the judicial system, our remand courts, our judicial pretrials and whatnot, to be able to be done virtually and having access to the file, as Chief Justice Morris just mentioned, all across Ontario. So it's coming, it's here, and it's something that we've been asking for quite a while, and it's finally here. So I see it happening. Not sure how long it's going to take. There'll be bumps in the road, but I do see it that one day we will be paperless in the Ontario Court of Justice.
I guess, does protocol require me to give the last word to Chief Justice Strathi? Is this how this works here?
Yes.
I'm seeing two others nod. So, okay, George Strathi, you get the last word.
Thank you. Well, I just wanted to pick up on what my colleague said. One of the things that's happened as a result of all this is that we have surmounted a learning curve in the courts. Judges have been required of necessity to learn new skills. And one example is that dealing without paper, dealing with digital documents, digital exhibits, we have in the space of a year, essentially in our court, and I know in the other courts as well, relying virtually on digital materials. That learning curve has required judges to learn new skills. Some judges who never used a computer are using them on a daily basis. They've applied their diligence and their experience to picking up this new methodology. And I completely agree with my colleagues. We're not going to look back. We've got some huge opportunities as a result of all this, and there really is a silver lining to the COVID cloud.
Well, this was so enjoyable. Should we do it again next week?
You'll have to set a special court date for you, but sure.
I can't thank enough Ontario's 3 Chief Justices, George Strathy, Jeffrey Morowitz, and Lise Maisonneuve, for joining us on TVO tonight for, what potentially is a new weekly show here on TVO, because this went so well. Thank you all very much, and of course, stay safe out there. As my dad likes to say, stay positive, but test negative.
Thank you, Steve.
You too.
Tomorrow on the agenda.
We might be getting to a point where we start to actually question a lot of these assumptions on which we've organized family life, and I have to say in the larger sense, our societies, around the notion that the individual is a sacrosanct unit upon which we have to build all our political systems. We might start to be tempted to think, actually, we're not that complex or unique. We're a bunch of algorithms.
That's tomorrow on the agenda. Some people have found ways to thrive during this year of lockdowns, learning all sorts of new skills, taking up hobbies. Others take our socially distanced everything much less in stride and find themselves in varying states of misery. How much does one's personality or even psyche suggest which path they'll take? Let's ask. In the annex neighborhood of the provincial capital, Avni Shah, assistant professor of marketing at the U of T's Rotman School of Management and a research fellow in the school's Behavioral Economics in Action Research Cluster. And in Midtown, David Zweig, associate professor of organizational behavior and HR management at the University of Toronto, Scarborough. And we're delighted to have you two on this program tonight for something that I know a lot of people have been thinking about lately, given how, what's the word the Premier likes to use? How squirrely a lot of us have become after a year of this business. Let's start out. We'll just set up our discussion by reading something that the journalist Matt Gurney wrote on our website, tvo.org. Sheldon, if you would, let's bring this graphic up, and here we go. As this pandemic has ground on, it has been remarkable to see how little experience with actual human beings our public health leadership seems to have accumulated. If humans were computers, and we could be programmed to simply follow advice and recommendations, we'd have beaten COVID-19 in several very dull weeks. But we aren't. We are weird, meat-brained mammals who aren't good at doing what we're told and routinely act against our self-interest, both individually and collectively. That's okay. Some of the best moments in life are the ones that probably aren't being narrated right out of a public health playbook. But suffice it to say, if your plan for dealing with a pandemic doesn't account for people being people, it's not a great plan, writes Matt Gurney. Okay, David, get us started here. Some people have fared better during lockdown than others. For those people, what tends to be their personality type?
Well, we can look at the combination of 5 different personality traits. And one of the big ones here that really influences how well we're doing is probably emotional stability. So the degree to which we're calm, we remain calm in stressful situations. And on the flip side of that, if we're feeling more anxiety about things, we tend to worry a lot. And, that one seems to be the one that really predicts how well we're coping with all of the stuff that's going on. But then you layer on other personality traits like our level of extroversion, how open we are, how conscientious we are, and how agreeable we are. And you put all that together, and that helps to determine how well we're doing in the situation that we're in.
Let me do a quick follow-up. So if you're an introvert, meaning you're probably okay to sit in a corner and read a book on your own, and that's fine for you, then the past year has been easier? Is that fair to say?
Probably. I mean, we all need we're social animals. We all need some level of social interaction. Introverts tend to need a little bit less than people who are more extroverted. So if you look at the interaction of introversion with someone who's higher in emotional stability, they're probably faring pretty well in the situation. They tend to like being in quieter environments, not surrounded by a lot of people. But on the flip side, if you're higher in, lower in emotional stability and higher in extroversion, this is probably a more challenging situation for you to deal with because you like being around people and you get energized by being around other people.
Now, Avni, there seem to be, well, let me overgeneralize just for the purposes of setting up this question. There seem to be two different types of people during a pandemic. Those who are able to get out of the house and still either do activities, go to a job, they're able to get out. And then there are others who, this has been a real lockdown and they just have not got out at all. Tell us about the toll that would take on the psyche of someone who can't get out.
I think it's incredibly difficult. We as human beings, I'm going to echo my colleague Dave, we as human beings are social, but there is a preference for novelty, for seeing new things, for interacting, even having these casual interactions with people, even your local barista or someone at a restaurant, or even just casual interactions in the TTC. And that really fuels us. And so the idea of being stuck at home or stuck in wherever people are located, either because they are trying to adhere to the public health norms or by circumstance or whatever it is, it's incredibly difficult for individuals. And I think it can take quite a toll, particularly as we project into, when is this, project into the future of when is this going to end?
Well, I'm just imagining what some people watching this or listening to this are thinking right now, which is, well, what do you mean you can't get out? No, surely nobody's housebound. They can get out and walk around the neighborhood if they want. But I hasten to remind people, I'm sure we all know people in their 80s or 90s or more, who during very cold winter weather, it would have been too big a risk to get outside and take a walk around. What do you imagine, Avni, this pandemic, what kind of toll do you think it's taken in particular on a demographic that can't get out because they're afraid to get out?
Yeah, and this is incredibly difficult. I think that's exactly the point here. Either it's just, trying to really limit those social interactions in all ways because you're on the higher end risk. And I think, this gets difficult as you're in your golden years. How do you want to be spending life? There's not the setup. My partner's parents, there's not the setup naturally for them to be on either Zoom or have interactions on FaceTime. And I think this really does take a psychological toll. And we look at that earlier quote that you brought up and say, well, are people rational versus not? Isn't it rational to want that interaction? Isn't it rational to want some social connection with people? And so I do think it's been quite damaging. It takes quite a toll. I even think about the other end of the spectrum, even kids. This is really, really a tough year. And so, to everyone, it's like, people have to feel validated about the notion that this is just not natural. And it's a very tough situation.
Indeed. The Ontario government has, of course, been advertising during the course of this pandemic in newspapers, on the radio, on television, on social media, giving us their public health advice. Let's play a snippet of something that I suspect many of us have seen, and then we'll come back and chat. Sheldon, if you would.
Even a small social gathering can spread the deadly COVID-19 virus to someone you love. Until we all get the vaccine, stay home, save lives.
Okay, I don't know how many Clio Awards you two have won in your times, but I'm going to put you on the spot here and ask you whether you think that is the right way to get the message across that the government clearly wants us to understand. David, go ahead.
See, I watch that and I actually get angry. And the reason I get angry is because I'm frustrated at the pace of the vaccinations that are taking place in the province right now. And maybe that's because I'm higher in neuroticism or lower in emotional stability that I worry about this stuff, and I worry about my 82-year-old mother. I worry about my kids and the impact it's having on them, and of course my family and other people who are isolated. And the message I want to hear is we are moving as fast as we can to get vaccines into everybody's arms so we can actually enjoy some of those scenes we saw in the beginning of the commercial.
Avni, what did you think of it?
Yeah, I completely agree with this. I mean, you look at the way our brains are set up, and I'm going to oversimplify here. I mean, did you not feel this surge of, pleasure and this I mean, just happiness in your reward centers, where you see that and you're like, oh, it's been so long. And the second image is then you're like, oh, right, of course. But it's actually really difficult then when we're looking at these trade-offs of wow, would it really be that risky? What is the percentage chance that it's going to end up in that way? I mean, people are really doing some of these calculations and looking at their mental health. And I think that is really difficult. I think another thing too is that we always focus on just the bad things rather than saying, okay, look, you're comparing here the pleasure of connecting with your friends and family members versus just the cost of it. But there should be pleasure in also saying, hey, can we have this dinner, right? What's the alternative, right? To then not have any social connection. But imagine if you saw then a clip to say people having dinner together, but all over FaceTime or all over Zoom or something like that. It's not the same. And I understand that, but at least giving someone substitute options so that it's not either, life, literally the joys of life versus death, but then it's like the joys of life in an alternative way that maybe is not as good, but at least is somewhat of a substitute.
Yeah, David, it's hard for me to imagine that this ad would not have been, focus group tested, and that there would have been several advertising experts brought onto the case to ensure that whatever message the Ontario government wanted to get out, that this commercial accurately portrayed it. But this ad seems really quite obviously designed to scare the hell out of you.
Sure.
You follow our protocols or else. Do you think that's the right message for the times?
Well, echoing on what Avni said, I think the right messaging for now is to, acknowledge everything that we've all been trying to do over the past year to protect ourselves and to protect others and, to protect the healthcare system in our province and our country. And it's time to start, actually rewarding us for all of our hard work and celebrating the things that we have done and what we can do in order to continue the effort until we can all come out of this and resume our normal lives.
So, Avni, something more along the lines of, boy, we've done a really good job so far, and we're almost there. Maybe more of that tone. Is that what you're saying?
I completely agree with this sentiment. And I mean, we think about all of the different policies and all the different messaging, and even things like I know the government, and particularly in Toronto, they'd come out with workplaces, for example, who had COVID outbreaks. But imagine if we took a reverse type of take. So sure, it's important to highlight that. But then how about the workplaces that have been COVID-free for a few months, all right? And championing those things and bolstering the reputation of the positive things, because then it's not just about avoiding the negative, but really celebrating and rewarding those positive, the positive public health initiatives that people have taken and the sacrifices people have taken.
David, I want to go back. A long way. Let's go back 80 years. Loose lips sink ships. Keep calm and carry on. I mean, these are expressions that have really stood the test of time, and they go back, of course, to World War II days, where the governments of the day were trying to warn us all, well, those of us who were alive, on how to conduct ourselves during a world war. Do you recall any great slogans that have come out of the past year?
No, actually, I can't think of any, and nothing comes to mind. I think the past year has been characterized by fear, 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 fear. Let's all do our part, and maybe we'll get out of this. But that's pretty much it. I mean, there's nothing inspirational that I think will resonate, decades into the future. It's kind of disheartening, actually, when you think about it that way.
So, Avni, as a marketing professor, well, I guess I should ask you the same thing. Is there a slogan that comes to your mind out of the past year?
The only thing I could think of is #stay at home. And that's really difficult when no one can see that either, right? I mean, that's one of the difficult things is that I haven't been outside in a long time, let's say, and I'm making the sacrifices, and no one can see that effort. There's no visual progress in that way. And so I think absolutely we have to focus on, I mean, what are the ways, the visual indicators that we can use to help people really champion and reward themselves for doing some good work. And things like I haven't gone to a grocery store. I've ordered the groceries in for quite some time to protect. I'm one to protect. Let's just say, as something better than just hashtag stay at home.
Well, Avni, follow up on this, and this may be a little out of left field, but what about sobriety? Are there lessons here that we can take from sobriety that are applicable in this set of circumstances?
Yeah, I mean, this completely. And I think one of the things with sobriety that's so good and going through they think through just little moments of, let's celebrate even the mundane things that we do. So obviously depression has been a big issue, and folks have felt little progress because of just all the staying at home. And so even just things like celebrating, hey, I made my bed, kids are in school, virtual or not, I went to work, I made it through the day, and having that, really changing lowering our expectations to understand the bandwidth issues that we're suffering from. But then also that visual progress element of, imagine if we instead had a whole campaign where instead in our windows we posted something like, hey, I've stayed at home and not gone out for anything non-essential for 89 days, right? And you wear that as a badge of pride rather than, wagging your finger at somebody and saying, oh, how terrible that they did this, because we have to understand that people are social and we want some reward at the end of this.
Well, okay, David, I'm not an ad expert either, but clearly that last ad that we saw there seems designed to scare the hell out of you into behaving appropriately. Yeah. Do you think it would have been the government of the day? I mean, this ad didn't come out yesterday. It goes back a bit. Do you think it's possible that the population needed scaring like that in order to follow the protocols properly?
I think sometimes we underestimate people and their ability to understand the situation. Maybe in the initial stages of the pandemic, we needed some of these imagery to really understand the impact. But I think as time went on, people certainly understood what the impact was, and what the impact of their behavior might have been. And so, we need to then change the message around reinforcing the positive behaviors rather than trying to punish us by showing us what will happen if we don't follow the rules. And, positive reinforcement, we know, whatever you reinforce increases. So if we do engage in positive reinforcement, we actually get better performance and better results than when we punish people.
So if you were going to bring out an ad today, you might take a different approach. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah, I think, certainly, reinforcing everything we've done, and the message that we have to keep doing this for a little bit longer. And, as Avni said, look at alternate ways that we can engage in the kind of socialization that we're all desperate to achieve. And then, if we keep doing this, we can actually get to, the initial parts of that ad where people are actually in a restaurant. My God, how great would that be? And enjoying ourselves with others.
Avni, if I had to judge body language, I'd say you're 110% on side with that. I see you nodding your head vigorously there.
Oh, no, absolutely. And I think another element that would help too is that, we all feel so alone, but messaging that helps us feel like we're part of a collective, right? And we're all in this together. And I think that was a little bit what Dave was saying and alluding to. I remember in the very beginning of the pandemic, we had this in my neighborhood. People would bang on the pots at 7:30 or so, and everyone would go outside and do that. And I have to say that definitely made me feel good to sit there and really acknowledge and be grateful and show gratitude to those essential workers, healthcare workers, but even essential workers like people who are working in the grocery stores and who are delivering food. Just really, those are the heroes. But saying that, right, and being part of a team effort to those daily reminders to say, hey, look, these are the people who are sacrificing things. I can do a little bit more. And particularly it's good in the evening when maybe our self-control is dwindling and we're like, oh, maybe I should go see my friend. That's when we were used to doing those types of activities.
I don't want to sound like a wimp, but that's harder to do when it's -7 outside. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Yeah, but we open a window, right? And now also look, the weather is getting much better today. It might be worthwhile to resurrect that. We're 1 year in, but let's really reward ourselves for going through this. And no, this is way beyond anything anybody expected, but good for us and good for all these essential workers that have really sacrificed so much. I mean, that makes me feel a lot better and more likely to comply and adhere to rules than finger wagging and saying, hey, look, everyone stay at home and you guys are terrible if you don't. It's saying, look, who am I doing this for? There's a greater purpose and there's a greater goal here.
Gotcha. David, let's talk about employers and employees. And I wonder what you think employers could be doing at this stage to help their employees, those who are either going into work or doing things virtually, to carry on or to keep calm and carry on, if I can steal the expression.
Listen, what we've been talking about since the beginning of this, when we all went into lockdown back, a year ago, is how, it's incumbent upon leaders and supervisors to make sure that their employees have what they need to work from home effectively. They're making sure, they're monitoring their stress levels of their employees, checking in with them regularly. All of those things still apply. What we should be thinking about now is how are we going to transition back to what comes after all of this, right? So what's it going to look like when we actually this is over, and we have to start thinking about how are we bringing employees back? Are we bringing employees back to the workplace? And how we're going to manage the tension between those who want to stay at home and those who are desperate to get back to the workplace.
Avni, have you seen changes in the way employers are leading during the course of this pandemic?
Yeah, and you've definitely seen differences across even the size of companies. I know a friend of mine received a care package, and they have a smaller business, but a care package from the managers and like the people who head up that particular office of like just little chocolates, a stress ball, was like a little pillow and a blanket, just from work from home. And they also gave a budget for air filters and even standing desks and things like that in the workplace. And I think that was a really good effort to acknowledge and validate people's emotions. So I think that's definitely one aspect. I've even seen employers do things like send sweatpants to their employees. And I think that really is then focusing on the positive elements. Well, even though they might be limited to a certain degree, but the positive elements of just a reminder, hey, you can actually wear sweatpants to work now. And so I think those are little efforts that people have made that at least acknowledge a bit. I think another element, and this has happened completely, is that one good thing is that we've also been able to see each other in a more personal way, because people's workspaces are now their homes. And so you can actually see kids and dogs and cats and have that more personal interaction that I think does help humanize all of us. We're not just employees.
Yeah, David, that answer from Avni does require me to ask the important follow-up question, which is, are you in fact wearing pants right now?
I'm actually wearing pants with a zipper and buttons, which is, a little novel.
Not sweatpants, real pants.
Not sweatpants.
Good for you. Pants. Good for you. I mean, you've got your integrity to consider after all. Yeah. Seriously, though, folks, let me follow up with this. There are people, David, who for a living spend a lot of time in very remote places by themselves. Researchers in, the Antarctic, for example, or astronauts. Is there anything we can learn from them and their psyches at this time?
Sure. I mean, as I mentioned earlier about personality traits, those are people who probably are more comfortable working in more isolated environments and don't get energized by being around people. And so they would have necessarily an easier time in those kinds of environments. If I'm not like that, if I am someone who is energized by being around people and I enjoy, talking with people, interacting with a lot of different people, I'm not going to be able to turn that off and suddenly, change my personality in order to fit with the situation that we're in. I can adjust, I can make it through, but it takes a toll. 1 year into this, it does take a toll on people who enjoy interacting with others and get energized by being around others.
While you two, Avni, sorry, you wanted to respond.
Yeah, it's so funny you bring this question up about astronauts, and I was on a call actually with Chris Hadfield, and you talk about an astronaut, and he had the most sage piece of advice. And he said, so often, someone had asked him the question of, what do you miss about space? And he rephrased that. And I think it's a lot of the lessons that he said there, he could be applied here in this pandemic. He said, so often we want to think about what we're missing out on in an alternate reality, an alternate life, right? You think about, what am I missing in space? He's like, no, instead, let's think about this, about what can I do here? Because inevitably, you're always going to not be doing other things because you're in this present state. He's like, think about, well, what can I achieve here, right? That I can't achieve in another time period, or if we weren't in lockdown, and sort of just understanding that element of like just basically having gratitude for what we can do, and not thinking about other opportunities because they just don't exist in this current reality. And I think that was, I mean, and he seems to be, I don't know whether he identifies as extroverted or introverted, but that's also a way that we can just increase a little bit of the resilience, is thinking not so much what am I losing, but what are even maybe the joys of missing out on certain things, but then also what are things we can now do that we wouldn't have been able to more easily do otherwise.
Great advice. David and Avni, thanks so much for joining us on TVO tonight. That was really helpful. Much appreciated.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And that is the agenda for Tuesday, March the 9th, 2021. Nobel Prize-winning author Kazuo Ishiguro has just published a wonderful new novel. He's with us tomorrow on what artificial intelligence can tell us about the human heart. Also, we examine how boards of directors in this province could do things differently and better. I'm Steve Paikin. Thanks for watching TVO, for joining us online at tvo.org, and we'll see you again tomorrow.
The Agenda with Steve Paikin is brought to you by the Chartered Professional Accountants of Ontario. CPA Ontario is a regulator, an educator, a thought leader, and an advocate. We protect the public. We advance our profession. We guide our CPAs. We are CPA Ontario. And by viewers like you. Thank you.